All right, so this is our panel for this Ask Me Anything session. I have a few questions for each panelist to prompt introducing yourself, and then we'll move into questions that have been submitted by students who registered for the event. Right before that, I'll give you a quick welcome by Colty, since we're hosting the event, and then we'll introduce the panelists, and then have about 30 minutes to respond to the submitted questions, and then I'll share some future events as well as few upcoming Ask Me Anything sessions like this one, and then we'll end with a question and answer session. Okay, so I want to first welcome you on behalf of Colty. So Colty is a mobile app and social platform for that really supports student success, but also connects academia. And we're doing that by building connections and then having those connections be focused around the academic network and ecosystem as well as research. So I'm going to show you first a video of a faculty profile. So this is my own profile. This is a place where you can get a quick glance of what kind of research I do, what kind of positions are open in the laboratory, and then a little bit of my professional background. But then one thing that's really unique to the Colty app is that there's an opportunity to post profile videos so that you can give a video introduction, whether you're a student.
As an international student, when you're looking at universities and when you're applying, especially if it's a country.
So whether you're a student or faculty.
Buenos dias from the SHIP conference.
Hi, my name is Robin Anand, and I'm an associate professor in the. So that's a quick overview of what's there in the app. So for faculty, there are no matches on the screen where it says coming soon, but this is where as we grow the community, faculty could see students that have similar interests or would be interested in their research. For the students, matches are visible. So this is what the match page looks like for a student. This is a student profile where I put in my interest as electrochemistry, and these are some of the faculty that are being shown to me in the match page. And coming up really soon, we'll have an ability to reach out to be able to chat in the app and ask about open positions and have a interaction between faculty and students. Okay, so now we'll move into the introduction of our panel. We'll start with Dr. Stephen Gilbert, who's in industrial and manufacturing engineering, as well as human-computer interaction here at Iowa State University. So Stephen, maybe you can respond to each of these points on the left.
Sure. Hi. I'm a little unusual because I have an undergrad degree in engineering, but my graduate degree was in cognitive science, and now I'm in industrial engineering. So I'm basically a techie with thinking about psychology and what software your brain is running. And that leads to lots of projects where I'm sort of consulting with people in other domains, trying to help them solve their problem from a human perspective. This summer will be the 17th summer that I've run an RU site on campus. So we've been running RU sites and welcoming kids to Iowa State from across the country for many years. I did not know about RU when I was a student. And I'm cheering for Usher that he can get through with no wardrobe malfunctions in the Super Bowl.
Okay. Awesome, good choice. All right, so my area of expertise is analytical chemistry, specifically developing devices that can improve human health, so mostly diagnostic devices. In terms of REUs, I have not hosted an REU program, but I have constantly a lot of students and undergraduate students working in my laboratory, including in the summer, sometimes visiting from other institutions. And as a student, RUs were really instrumental for me in leading me towards my current career path. And then in the Super Bowl, I'm cheering for the 49ers. All right, next we'll go with Bhaskar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so I'm a faculty in mechanical engineering and electrical computer engineering at Iowa State. My area of expertise is computing, scientific computing. My group designs algorithms for modeling and designing and controlling complex systems. Involvement with RU twofold. First is I was part of a team here at Iowa State that ran an RU program for 9 years, and then after a gap of six years, we are restarting it this summer. So I've been intimately involved in organizing and running RUs, and then over the past decade or so, I've had 45 undergraduate students go through my research group as as a research experience for undergrads. And so I did participate. I did not do my undergrad here in the US, but I did participate in an IU program as an undergrad, and that really opened my eyes to the possibilities of a research career. And unlike Robin, I'm cheering the Chiefs.
All right. We'll see who wins. All right, Maddie.
I'm an undergraduate student at Iowa State studying chemistry, applied maths, and a minor in music. I have an interest in analytical chemistry, and I've done research in Robin's group the summer before my first summer at Iowa State. I've done 2 REUs as an undergraduate. I did one at Michigan State University and one at Middle Tennessee State University. And I am cheering for Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy only.
Awesome. Okay, Anuj.
Hi, I'm Anuj Sharma. I'm a faculty in civil engineering department at Iowa State. And my area of research is application of data science in improving quality of life, specifically focused on transportation. In terms of involvement with REU, in general, I have worked with Stephen as well through his side. I have also brought in both international as well as national students individually to work with me over the summer as interns, and it has been a great experience, and some of them have continued to work with me for master's and PhD. In terms of I did my undergrad from India like Bhaskar, and I did go for a Indian RU. I was in IIT Madras for the summer, and it did inspire me to pursue graduate studies, as well as made some money. So that is always good. And who am I cheering for Super Bowl? I'm also cheering for 49ers and Purdy.
All right. Awesome. Okay, and finally, Chuck Henry.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So I'm a faculty member in chemistry, chemical and biological engineering, and biomedical engineering here at CSU. Like Robin and Maddie, my main area of emphasis is in analytical chemistry, but we use some engineering techniques to create analytical devices to make measurements. A lot of our work focuses on both clinical diagnostics and environmental diagnostics, including citizen science. I've actually been involved in REUs for a long time. I did 2 REUs as an undergraduate, one at Nebraska and one at University of Arkansas. I ultimately worked for my PhD mentor at University of Arkansas based on their REU. And as an undergrad, they absolutely shaped my career and where I went from a PhD perspective. As a graduate student, I also helped mentor REU students in Arkansas, and so I kind of had that perspective as well. As a faculty member, I also was a co-PI on an REU program here at CSU for a while, and I've hosted a lot of NSF REU students in my lab throughout the years, as well as like a couple of the other folks on the call. I've hosted people from in the US as well as South America and Southeast Asia in my lab for summer undergraduate research experience. I would say for me, it just, it would be, it was really transformative, and I've seen it be transformative for a lot of the people who've come through my lab as well. For the Super Bowl, I'm cheering for a high score, a lot
All
of
right.
points.
Okay, and yeah, let it be an interesting game. Okay,
Right.
awesome. So thank you to all the panelists. And so now I want to move forward to the questions that have been submitted by students who have registered for the event. So the first question is, who decides which applicants are accepted to an REU program? Anyone can
I'll
jump
just
in.
say, so I'm leading our RU site with a co-PI, and so he and I go through the applicants and rank them on a variety of characteristics, and so we decide.
Okay. And do you think that's pretty uniform across the board? That most REU sites are somewhat similar?
I would say,
so.
Robin, ours is different.
Cool.
So I'm actually hosting an REU student this summer. We actually received a list of all the applicants who applied to our REU program, delineated by which projects they were interested in, and ours requires a joint project between two faculty. And then my collaborator and I put together a list of which students we would be interested in from the applicants in rank order, and then the PIs decided from there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it really differs. It really differs about whether RU sites give students the choice, or whether they're choosing the students first and then like assigning their projects. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, actually,
somebody else was going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that came to my mind was that I think the students don't have any visibility into whether their choice of project impacts their chances of getting into a program. Do you think that that's the case?
Not in ours.
I mean, in ours it does, just to the extent of there are some programs that were some specific projects that were a lot of people wanted to do, and so it's just more competitive.
Yep. So in those programs where students get to choose or indicate which project they want, then there could be some programs that are oversubscribed, and like that selection is emphasized as opposed to just generally looking at the applicants.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so that starts to answer the next question that came in, which is what makes a strong candidate for an REU? So what are those top features you're looking at?
I'm going to make sure somebody else gets a chance to talk.
I think for me, it sometimes also depends on the project which I'm going after. So if I have a specific project which requires specific skills, for example, currently if I'm working on a project where I need someone with some skills with Raspberry Pi or some computational skill, I'll choose go for that person. This is not a typical answer for if you are managing a site versus if you're individually hiring a few folks. I'm bringing in the perspective of hiring intern as an individual faculty rather than as a group. So that's my answer. I specifically am looking for skills which meet the requirement of the project. And in terms of recruitment, I'll probably there are people who will be reaching out to me that if I have options and select it from them. So it is a little bit less organized.
Yeah, let me add to that, right? So wearing both hats as one hat as a individual researcher who's looking for undergraduate students to fill specific tasks and gaps in the program. Then I do, like Anuj, look at specific skill sets. In my case, comfort with programming or interest and enthusiasm on working on specific application areas like architecture, environment, biomedical devices, and so on. Whereas if I put on my hat as a RU site coordinator, then our interest is in looking at a broad spectrum of candidates. Definitely, we would want people who have prior experience with REUs, but then we feel that is already, those people with prior experience with REUs and research experience are already reasonable candidates that pass the filter for individual PIs. So we cast our net far and wide in terms of people who don't have any experience with research, because an RU program is pretty well orchestrated in that you have targeted activities on teaching about team science, about data science, about ethics, about how do you do research, how do you look at papers, how do you do literature survey, and so this kind of experience provides a first preview of what research entails, and so that's the difference in from a RU coordinator perspective of selection of students versus an independent PI selection of students.
Let me add that I think it depends on, when you're running the site, it depends on whether your goal is to have successful research projects or to lift people up into the world of research knowledge. And you can do both, right? But when you get that applicant that has the 35 ACT and the 4.0 and you think, do I want this person? Or do you think, no, I don't, because they don't need my help. And so sometimes we think that we want to be a change agent in people's lives and dramatically transform people's lives. So I'm going to take the kid maybe with the 2.8 GPA who's eager and has some experience that shows me like, oh, they're persistent and they've had teamwork skills. And so there's sometimes I'm looking at that more than the person whom I know is going to traditionally academically succeed, because as Bhaskar mentioned, the program's highly structured and we can put people through the process.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add in on what Stephen just said. I think it's a great point. You know, I bluntly have a soft spot for students also coming from schools that have either little or no background in research, right? I mean, that's the school I went to. I'm going to date myself, Robin. The only real instrument that we had was to do polarography, which is most people have never heard of.
Wow.
It involves liquid mercury. So right, very limited resources, and it was going to a place that had real research resources that really changed the trajectory of my career. So I have a soft spot, there, for students, and then also I would say diverse representation. So, across, gender and race, but then also school size and geography. I think those things are very important when I think about building a strong cohort of REU students.
I'll just mention also the teamwork thing I mentioned is important for ours because we group our REUs in teams of 3. So if I stick you in a team of 3 in a lab for 10 weeks, it's going to be intense, right? So I want to see people that have teamwork experience.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's going through my mind, like talking about teams and also talking about, choosing diverse candidates, makes me think about, for some students, I know it was certainly true for me coming out of a very small town. Like when I moved into research, that was the first time that I felt like I was just meeting people from, all over the country. There was a postdoc from Poland that I worked with that summer. So it really gave me a more global perspective. And I think that's a huge benefit to students, regardless of what they do next in their career.
We had a guy come from urban New York, and he was afraid to step on the grass in Iowa. Like by the end of the summer, he was walking in the grass, but with his shoes on.
It's some good grass. All right. Anyone else on this question?
So just adding, maybe asking another question to Stephen and other people who run REU sites. Are you also looking at diversity in the background of their specialization? Like, are you choosing people who might be in sciences as well as bringing someone from social sciences and computational background and putting them in a team together, or it is still limited in terms of specialization? It is limited diversity.
Our site is a little unusual because we are pretty interdisciplinary. Human-computer interaction is pretty interdisciplinary. So you have computer science, design, psychology, in that sort of field. So we have taken, NSF, we're part of the SIZE Directorate, which is Computing, Information, Science, and Engineering. So we've got to be a little engineering-ish and techie, but we have taken some biologists and psychologists and majors, even one design major. So we have a mix, but we need to have I think of it as a portfolio. We're going to take 9 students, and I want the whole portfolio of 9 to be a nice mix, so that it's not all design. It's not all two in one direction.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to move ahead. I think we've actually addressed this question of what qualifications and skills are relevant beyond coursework, but does that make any other thoughts come to mind?
I'll just add that on the resume, when I see things like I was the basketball team leader or team captain, or that sort of leadership stuff is really impressive to me. I get excited about that.
Yep.
And I was just going to add, clarity of communication in the written documents is also really important.
Yes.
I know when I was applying to REUs, my first year I didn't get into any because I didn't have any background in research. And I know like some REUs focus on getting people who don't have any research background. But for the ones specifically that I was applying to, they required research background. So having research did really help me get into those REUs. And in one of my interviews that I did for the REU, they asked about service. Like, do you do any outreach with the sciences? So having that is also very helpful in getting an REU as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can add to that. Right. So I think all the points made were excellent points. I think with an eye to the future, I think social media plays a big role. So if you have if you show that just like you have team experiences, leadership experiences, in addition to that, if you show social media savvy, I think that's a plus, right? So everyone is interested in leveraging influencers for to get more visibility, and RU side is no different.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that the younger the generations you look at, the more social media savvy they get on the average. So we're in luck there. Okay. How do you decide which type of research or project to pursue? So if you were to give this advice to a student, how should they decide?
You kind of just have to jump right in. I did not know I was interested in analytical until I joined your lab. Like, I was kind of just like, okay, well, I just need to join a research lab, figure out if I'm interested, and if not, need to join a different lab and reach out to another professor. And it turns out I really liked analytical chemistry. Okay, so what kind of analytical chemistry do I like? Do I like electroanalytical chemistry, or do I like instrumental analysis? Well, it turns out I like instrumental analysis. Well, maybe I don't like analytical. Do I like inorganic? So I did an REU in inorganic chemistry. I do not like inorganic chemistry. I'm going to stick with analytical, I think. So you just kind of have to test the waters, see what you like, reach out to everybody, and figure out what you like.
Yes. I think on this side of the equation, like being faculty and kind of having a little bit more of a view of what the different disciplines are, and research areas are available within those disciplines, it's easy to forget how difficult it was as a student. For example, when I was an undergraduate, I went to a school that didn't have any engineering programs, for example. So, that exposure wasn't there. And, when looking for an REU program, it would have been really, really tough to pick a research area.
I was going to add.
Go
ahead,
Chuck.
Stephen. Nope, go Stephen. It's good.
Okay, so I'll note that for me, I tell students, like, college, if you don't do research, college is like grades 13 through 16. And, people are going to tell you what to do, and you get an A and you just keep going. But research is where they just tell you to think of something clever to do. So it's much less formed, it's much less guided. But so you need to experience that. You need to experience the, like, oh, I have to figure things out. But you also need to do that with advice from your mentor, because the mentors can have a sense of like, well, that's not a 3-month project, that's a 10-year project, so don't do that. So ideally, the mentors are giving you a little bit of room to float, like, I'm doing things in developmental robotics to help with people who work together with robots in warehouses. So that's a high level problem. You know, go do some readings, figure out what in that you want to refine and pick on, and then we're going to iterate back and forth. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to echo something Maddie said. Yeah, so I think that for me, right, my first REU was in physical chemistry, and it was one of those things that taught me just not interested. So it was a chance to do something different. My second one was in electroanalytical chemistry, and it's kind of realizing what I really did like. You know, I tell students to do one of two things, my undergrads, when they're looking at these opportunities. Either pick something you're passionate and very interested about and go deeper in it, or pick something different, kind of like what Maddie did with inorganic, and use as a chance to say, hey, maybe I've always thought I wanted to do analytical chemistry, but in reality, I love organic chemistry. And it's a chance to do it. And then, you know, towards the last point, it's also, even if you're, you know, you do like analytical chemistry better, having done something else, right? So, mechanical engineering world, right? So I've got ME colleagues who are doing aerosol studies, and then they have people who will go work on vehicles, right? So unrelated, but it's that diversity of experience can help you, even if it's not what you're passionate. So, that's my advice. Either pick something you're passionate about, or pick something that's different, very different, that you can learn a new skill from.
Yeah, now that you say that, pick something new. The reason I chose the subject I did, which was electrochemistry, for my first REU experience, was because my professors at my undergraduate institution had skipped electrochemistry when we got to that part, and I said, well, I need to learn it, so here we go. So we picked for all kinds of reasons.
I had one perspective to bring in as well is if there's certain job type or a person you like, you can also look at their LinkedIn profile in terms of what they did. And it would be, since sometimes these REU would be the thing you'll be doing rest of your life, it might be a good idea that, I want to be someone like this person, and choose the area that way too, because you don't want to be stuck in an area where you won't be as successful in, and things like that. So you can build your resume. It is also a resume building tool.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I find it interesting to see on a lot of times on a faculty web page, it's, you can see the alumni and where they went on to work as well. I mean, I think what you suggested, like looking on something like LinkedIn to see where people eventually go, is probably the most efficient way to do that. But it's interesting to see where students end up being placed after they finish a certain degree in a certain research area.
I'd also like to add that you don't have to be good at something to pursue something. I did not get the best grades in analytical chemistry. You can see it on my transcript. I did the best in inorganic and physical chemistry, but that's just not where my interests lie. So I'm going to continue to pursue the thing that interests me, not where my grades tell me I should be going. So just because you're not the best at it doesn't mean you shouldn't go and pursue it. Do what you want to do.
Yeah. True, because motivation's a much bigger factor, finally.
And I want to echo that very strongly, right? So in that, you start to appreciate and like a skill only after you've gotten some proficiency with that skill, right? So like swimming or riding a bike, right? So it sucks. You fall, you fail. Initially, you get frustrated, but then once you get reasonably good at it or reasonably okay with it, then you start enjoying it and learning the nuances, right? And RU program is exactly that, right? You got to, it's okay to not like something, and that's why some RU programs give the opportunity to switch, right? But the ability to learn something new and then spend 10 weeks of intensive effort, and if someone is doing an RU site, I strongly encourage you to commit to it, right? So 10 weeks, that is could be, and two of the panelists here, it transformed their life, right? Because the RU program, they continued on with their RU mentor for their PhD, right? So, and that's a significant fraction of the panelists here.
Yes, very true. All right. What is your advice for getting the most out of the research experience itself? It's a short period of time.
I think you have to decide how long is appropriate to bang your head on the wall when you're frustrated and don't know something. You know, if you're working in a factory on an assembly line, you only bang your head on the wall for like 3 minutes because you're going to break the line. You got to stop. And if you're an undergrad, I would say like a day max, maybe even half a day. If you're a PhD student, I'll let you bang your head on the wall for like a week. But but you've got to so that means you've got to communicate a lot with your mentor. You got to ask a lot of questions and impress the mentor by putting in some work before you ask the questions. But yeah, a lot of communication.
Very true. And I think that actually graduate students are sometimes hesitant to ask for advice. And so I feel like undergraduates especially might feel like they're not allowed to ask for help or ask those questions, but it's even more important to ask and expect it as well. I mean, I appreciate it when students come to me and ask a question.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. My number one thing is always ask questions and ask questions not only about the experiments that you're doing, but the experiments other people are doing around you, other parts of projects. It's a chance to learn. And then the other one is participate. Right. So we always try in my group when undergraduates come in to just make them part of the group, even if they're there for 10 weeks, and try to get them to participate because they're going to learn by participating, in things, whether it be the science, the group activities, the journal clubs, you name it. So that's my advice. Ask questions and participate.
Maddie, how about you? Is there anything you did differently between your RU experiences? You felt like you got more out of one than the other, or they were similar?
I think it was like the people around me and who I chose to be around and who I asked questions for. So I feel like the main difference between the two is like if my advisor was present or not. And so in my second one, I shared a lab with multiple PIs. And so they had grad students that they worked with. So I asked them a lot about their research and I got an interest in like biophysical chemistry. So like even asking the other people's and what their research is and trying to figure out like, oh, is that something that interests you maybe? That was the main difference between the two REUs for me is like, I'm like, maybe biochemistry is something I could get into, bioanalytical.
And that's because you took the time, or like you had an environment around you with like more diverse research focus so that you could explore.
It was both. I had the environment to be able to ask people around me.
Yeah.
Those types of questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And what impact can an RU have on your career? I think that's we've touched on that a little bit. I think several of us have had RU have a major impact on our careers.
I think especially for students, as Stephen was mentioning, that if you have a 2.8 GPA, but you have really strong recommendation letters from your RU folks, it can be a life changer even if you don't want to go to academia. And that kind of is an opportunity to take. And then the second thing was, what do you really want to do after you graduate? Because like even in mechanical engineering, there are 50 different things, or even in civil engineering, there are 50 different things you can be doing. But RU gives you that small sample space to test if you really want to do it for the rest of your life or not. So I would say that it can help you choose what career you want to get, and then it can also build your resume that you can finally have that career.
Yeah, I mean, it in addition to resume, network. So when I, think back on, who I would reach out to, especially having stayed in, academic research for my career, those people who I met either in graduate school or at REUs are the first ones I'd go to. But the thing that really stands out in my mind is, I had a major milestone in my career, and one of the people that emailed me to say congratulations was the professor with whom I researched in my very first REU experience, first time I did research as an undergraduate. So those connections can last for a long time.
Yeah, and I'll give you there's some great examples of people, changing and moving on in a research career. I'll give you an example of a student who did, research in my undergraduate lab, and actually was great for her because she realized she didn't want to be in a lab the entire time for her career. So she ended up getting a degree in chemistry and business. And guess what? I just hired her as an associate product manager because of her knowledge of technical and business expertise. And she would have never done that had she not done undergraduate research. She would have gone on and gone to grad school and probably not been happy with it. So, I mean, that to me, that's a great example of the successful outcome of doing an REU is somebody understanding where their fit is in, professionally in the world. So,
yeah, that's really transformative.
I think this will build on yours a little bit, Chuck, where, in the RU, you go deeper on research, and research is about questioning and moving a little more slowly than industry. I was 9 years in the software industry before being a professor, and I was sometimes frustrated by the speed with which people would make decisions without thought, and, oh, it's the new trend, we have to do X. And I think if you get a little bit of taste of research in an RU, it's going to affect you lifelong to be a little bit more thoughtful. You can't be the stick in the mud for the industry people, but you're going to be the one who steps back and says, like, wait a minute, there's information out there. We should read a little bit. And then they'll, that's going to help.
Yeah. All right. I think this might be our last question. Are there REU programs that accept international applicants?
I know they exist. Ours does not. And the NSF money can only pay for U.S. citizens, but there are REU sites. Like, I'm on a Slack group with other PIs of size directorate REU sites, and there's one guy that says, "Oh yeah, I get international students at our site, but we use other funds to pay for them. But then they share in all the mentoring and the what is research things."
Yep. I know I get contacted by international applicants, and if the funding's there, I'm happy to bring them. I think that certain universities have a pipeline set up, so to speak, or a program. So, for example, our department in chemistry at Iowa State had an arrangement with Beijing Normal University for 5 or 6 years, where every summer a cohort of about 8 students would come in and be assigned to different labs, and our department would even arrange for their housing. And I mean, those programs exist, but I think that it's sometimes tough to find them. Okay, so for the anyone who's interested in those international, who's an international student who's interested in REUs, I think what I'll do is follow up with some resources about where to search for those those REU programs that do accept international applicants. Okay, so that's the end of the submitted questions by students who registered for the event. If you want to know more about upcoming Ask Me Anything sessions, you can find those on Colty's website. We also announce them on LinkedIn, and if you follow us on LinkedIn, then you'll be among the first to hear about them. We have a lot of Ask Me Anything sessions that focus on other topics, in particular graduate school, applying to graduate school, and upcoming topics that are relevant to current graduate students. Now I'm going to move to open Q&A. So if any of the students who are attending would like to ask questions, now's the time you can unmute and ask your question.
Now, I did have a question.
Thank you, Markel.
Yeah, no problem. So for all of y'all, is there any advice that y'all would offer to someone who is working full time and wanting to attend graduate school part time?
I would say you could do a master's part-time, and our human computer interaction runs that regularly. We do online degrees, so there are people who are watching me on the Saturday mornings recordings, and it's going to be slower, right? Because you're taking usually one course at a time. Maybe you reserve that 5 hours on Saturday morning. I don't think you can do a PhD while working full time. I have seen it once or twice in 20 years, but it's rare. It's not recommended.
That would be really tough. Yeah.
What we have done is sometimes we have had a student maybe take off in the last year of their PhD. So they have finished their course requirement. They kind of know what essentially they need to get done. They get a good job opportunity in some big firm. And in those scenarios, we are like last year, they can be working somewhere full time.
That's right. That does happen.
I think it's also dependent a little bit upon the degree track. So my sister-in-law just finished a doctorate. She's a high school Spanish teacher, and so she was able to do that over a series of a number of summers. Was the bulk of her work, and then this last year she completed her thesis. And in her case, her school gave her some teaching relief to do that. So I think it does depend upon the specific degree program that you're pursuing. And how much of it is laboratory research based versus other types of research and scholarly activities.
Yeah, Markel, you mentioned music education, so it might be more like what Chuck's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a professor here at Iowa State who is a music educator, and he was working full time and he got his PhD online for conducting. So it took him like 5 years to get a PhD in conducting, which normally would have taken him maybe 2 years to do that, but he was able to do a full-time job and do that with a family. It's not recommended. He hated it, but he got it done.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, when you say, and he got it done, like, I think that resonates with me because, yeah, it's all really tough. But if you are passionate about what you want to do at the end, then, you can enjoy it for years.
Cool.
It's worthwhile.
Awesome. But thank you, y'all.
Yes, thank you, Markel. Other questions?
I was wondering if you had any specific advice on like writing applications, like specifically the personal statement.
So I would say for writing a personal statement, I think that the main thing is to have it very, clear what your personal motivation is, and if you have a specific research interest, being able to communicate that clearly, and just keeping it very factual. Like, what do you bring to the table, or why are you applying to this particular opportunity, as opposed to making it more like an essay.
Yeah, it demonstrates your enthusiasm.
I'll say, because we're in a tech discipline, I get a lot of essays that start with, since I was a small child interested in technology, and it's like the whole sort of life history, and I'm less interested in that and more interested in, are they aware of some of the recent tech issues like ethics and AI, or there's a lot of current issues, something like that. So that shows me they're keeping up with what's current. And then if they've looked at our website about our research topics, and they're maybe referring to some of those, like, I see that the goal of your research center or research site is X, and I believe I can contribute to that goal because of my interest in this or skill. So they're tying them together.
Yeah, having actually researched the program and thought about it themselves in that context.
Yeah. And I shouldn't discount telling personal stories in the essay. A personal story could be really powerful. I guess I'm tired of the since I was a child ones that start that way.
I've seen plenty that are like a ship in a lighthouse, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Any other questions? These are all good questions. Alvin or Rishika? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then I guess I'll wrap things up there. So thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to the panelists for taking time this evening and sharing your experience and expertise. And I'm excited also to be able to share the recording as a resource. So thank you so much for your thoughtful responses to the questions.